Got a question for you on that. We've got former OU quarterback Paul Thompson here joining us on Unfair Sports. Got to ask you, BV, I know you've got some fun stories of him losing his mind on the sideline. You got to give us one that was funny from practice or a game. What you got?
I mean, yeah. So the nightmare, especially as a freshman coming in, was so that my most of my interactions, right, obviously as being an offensive guy, I didn't really, I weren't, we'd have our own kind of, coaches dinners where we'll go to their house and hang out and stuff like that. So, you'll have the defense will do their thing too. But one thing of being a freshman is your scout team, right? So you're running plays for the defense. And so at this time, so BV was just a linebackers coach. So Mike, so that's two, Mike can get after you probably at another level than BV could. I heard some combination words that I'd never heard before as an 18-year-old coming out of Leander High School in Austin, Texas. I was like, wait a minute, what happened to all that sweet, fluffy stuff everyone was saying when I was being recruited, right? And so, BV was, he'd get to going and he'd get that spit going on his lip, whenever you didn't throw it to the right guy. It's crazy because, you're running scout team. And so you're basically you're running exactly the plays that they want you to do and throw it to the receiver they want you to throw it to, whether he's open or not. And so where you get into it is where they'll rip you is if you throw it to another guy, even if he's open. And so they're so structured in what they want to see. They want to get a look at their defense and how they're reacting to me, because this is what they've seen on film and their tendencies of the offense that they're going to be playing against. That they're going to look here first. And so you'll get into trouble and you can get ripped for throwing a complete pass to the wrong receiver. And so a lot of times, regardless, and that's not always the case, but a lot of times, you go into the huddle, they'll draw up a play, or not draw up, but they got all the plays written down, but they'll have one of the receivers circled. And so that's where you got to throw it. And so BV's given it to me a couple of times just because, I didn't stick to the script. And so you got to push down your natural instincts of throwing it to the open guy and make sure you throw it to who they want you to throw it to for that specific play. And so, but, not a whole lot of credit. Like I said, I wasn't, even off the field, wasn't around hanging out. It was more on the field type stuff. But BV could get after it for sure. And so he's brought that same level. What's crazy is, and you can probably tell from his voice, but he's had that same voice, for 20 years now, since he was, in his early 30s. And so you can tell his intensity. He still has that same intensity. And again, Mike Stoops had it at a different, I guess I wouldn't say his intensity was more, it was just different. Mike had a couple screws loose, that's for sure. And so, a great coach in his own right, but he had a little tick, a little twitch to him that was unlike anything I had ever seen before.
That's funny. He says he had a couple screws loose, which I could totally see that. I mean, I feel like you have to be a little loony on the defensive side to actually.
I think you gotta. I think you almost have to. You gotta have screws loose to just be a coach in general, right?
That's
you gotta be a little different for college football or really any level of football. Shoot, I had coaching my son, up through Little League. I was like, all right. That'll make you crazy in itself right there. And so I can't imagine trying to maintain and watch over, 85, 18 to 20-year-olds, 22-year-olds, and get them to perform. It's tough.
I bet. And I was actually going to ask you the question on what kept you out of going into coaching, but it sounds like trying to keep up with all those young kids was probably the problem.
Yeah. So even prior to me having kids and a family and all that, it just never interested me. So, again,
That's
it
fair.
takes a different kind of person from a lifestyle standpoint. It's 24/7. Not that other professions aren't, but then you got the aspect of you're dealing with young men that are going to make mistakes, and you got to. I know a lot of these coaches can't sleep at night, because they're worried. I can't imagine today, prior to whatever it was 3-4 years ago when this NIL kicked in, right? You don't have to worry about a kid running around campus corner with $100,000 in their pocket, right? And all the mistakes and bad decisions and choices that can come from that. So, it's just never been an interest of mine. There's just so many. Obviously, I got tons of friends that are in coaching now, and pulling your kids out of school, and obviously Lincoln leaves in the middle of the night, right? And you got a guy like Calvin Thibodeau who's not retained, and he had finally worked his way to making it here to the University of Oklahoma, his alma mater, and head coach leaves, and it's like, hey, we'll see you later. Up and move your family, right? Your wife's just got to tag along, regardless of what career she's trying to pursue. Your kids got to get up out of school, and so those were things that I kind of factored in, but it was never really it never really was a thought process or in my thought process to be a coach.
Okay, I can dig that. I totally understand that. I think that's the one thing for me is the as long as your spouse, and it's funny because it seems like, especially with the older coaches, their wives just got their own lives, and they're just like, whatever the husband's doing, he's doing his thing, and they're just living their own life as a local celebrity. Like Miss Terry over there in Alabama, she runs Tuscaloosa, and there's no way that Nick could ever leave that city. Oh, my correction, he can leave. She ain't going nowhere. Right. I'll just see you, maybe one of these weekends if I decide to still entertain you. But I didn't really get to hear your recruiting story. How did that go when it came to being a recruit? And is in comparison to today, of course, with NIL, there's a big difference there. But what was it like being a recruit, especially coming out of Austin, Texas?
Yeah. So I was getting all the Trader and everybody when I played, because I committed to OU the summer before my senior year, just to kind of shut everything up, which is complete opposite of what happens now, right? When you commit, or you got a kid that commits, which doesn't mean anything anymore, right? I committed heading into my senior year because that's typically, what you do to stop all the phone calls and stop all the interaction. And then the team knows that, okay, hey, I got this many guys that have committed, so I have this many scholarships that'll go to them. Nowadays, all that's out the window. So even when someone commits, they're still getting recruited, and it just really defeats the whole purpose anyways. But I committed to OU the summer before my senior year, and I had an official visit. Mark Clayton was my host. So what's funny is my offensive coordinator at my high school he grew up here in Oklahoma, big OU fan, and was always talking about OU this, OU that. My freshman, my sophomore year, and then I guess it might have been my junior year, 2000.
Okay.
Yeah, or I guess my sophomore year, because I know the championship was in 2000. Championship was 01 for OU when they won the national championship. And so that was really my first, OU, they kind of, because, obviously before that, they, were just mediocre. And so I remember Coach Williams just saying, hey, OU, and he had on his phone the Boomer Sooner song. So that was my first kind of interaction with an OU fan. I had no clue where Norman, Oklahoma was, right? And so as I was getting recruited, my junior year and all of that, Bobby Jack Wright, started showing up. So he recruited Texas, and obviously Chuck Long, my position coach, started coming down, right? And they got these national championship rings on, and Bob Stoops comes to the house, and I'm like, yo, this is legit, right? I'm like this is, and then I realized, shoot, Norman, Oklahoma is only 5 hours away from my hometown. And I'm like, ain't no way Norman, Oklahoma, I had no idea where Norman, Oklahoma was, right? And so I was like, man,
Interesting.
5 hours away. Not that that was, I could have gone to Florida or anywhere else. It wasn't a distance thing, but I'm like, man, that's pretty cool. My grandmother lived in Denton, Texas, and so that's kind of halfway point there. And so went on my recruiting visit, loved it. And ultimately, was like, man, they're going to allow me to play quarterback. Texas was my other choice. I kind of had it narrowed down to OU and Texas. Texas offered me that summer prior to, around the same time, Texas had offered me, but they offered me as a receiver. I went to their 5-day camp. First 4 days was quarterback. Last day, Mac Brown was like, hey, let's see you at let's see you at receiver. And obviously they had, Vince Young obviously was my same year, and that was going to be their guy at the quarterback position. So they wanted me to try out receiver. Went out, ran some routes, snagged everything, Moss and people, and they were like, we want to offer you. So the next day I came in and they offered me as a receiver, and I was like, man, I could be right here in my backyard. But I was never like a diehard Longhorns fan. I followed them just because they were in my backyard, but was never like, I wasn't at all the games and rocking the gear or nothing like that. So I was like, man, you know what? Mac, I'm not Mac, but Bob and Chuck, Coach Long, so they're going to let me play some quarterback. So let's go on up north and go play quarterback. So that was ultimately what it came down to. Again, loved the campus. It blew my mind just being that I was from Austin, and Texas's stadium, Darrell K. Royal, is it's in the middle of downtown, right? So you got skyscrapers and parking garages in 6th Street and all this, and then the stadium sits in the middle of downtown and Frank Irwin Center. And I remember coming on my visit, and I'm driving down Lindsay Street, right? And I'm like, there's the stadium, like right off of Lindsay, a one-way. And I'm like, my mind's blown because I'm like, where the hell do people park? How do you get what's going on here? How is the stadium off of this little side road?
Yep.
And so that just blew my mind. Then I realized everyone just parks in everybody's yard and all that stuff. But yeah, it was way, way different than what I thought, especially, a team that was coming off a national championship, and they just started putting up that east side, right? So they just started, that was kind of that was the newest selling little point, was that deck on the east side of that stadium that's there now. So yeah, I was like, yeah, let's do this. And so yeah, I got called traitor and Okie and all that stuff my senior year versus all the other teams.
Oh man, that's funny just to think about that, because I can totally see it. I mean, being in Austin and you're going to Oklahoma, I was thinking about, there was one recruit last year, Colton Vasek, who had initially committed to Oklahoma. Dad's a Texas alum. And then, of course, eventually he decommitted and decided to go to Texas instead. But it was like, I was thinking to myself the entire time, like, what made anybody think, or made you think you were going to go to Oklahoma and people were not going to just jump all over you for leaving and going against the rival? Because it's a rivalry. Oklahoma and Texas, we don't like each other. There's a purpose for that. And so, but luckily you were part of the ride of blowouts and beating up on Texas, so we don't have to really dive too far into that
I was
portion
part of them 65-13s and 12-0s. So yeah, we got a handle of them, and then I lost my junior, so my 4th and 5th year, my junior and senior week. So we lost to Texas my junior year. Obviously, that was their national championship year.
Yeah.
And then lost to Colt McCoy the following year. And I always say that was really our only true loss that year, because our first loss was Oregon, right?
Oh yeah, the onside kick.
And so, the onside kick, and then the miracle at Boise State in the Fiesta Bowl. So there was 2 games in there in that 11-3 season that were borderline. Well, the Oregon game wasn't borderline anything. That was a flat out robbery job.
Yeah.
And then Boise State, obviously, the stars aligned for them that day, and they got us.
Yeah, I remember that. So I guess what the interesting on that one is you got to play with Adrian Peterson as your running back, and we had a stable of backs in your era, man. What was that like?
Yeah.
Having those backs that you just hand the ball off to and they're gone.
Yeah. And shoot, Kale's got to get more credit, for the arsenal that he's had since he's been there. Starting back with Quentin Griffin and Ronaldo Works and DeMarco Murray's, and you had the two guys here at Cincinnati now. Like his name's.
Oh yeah, you're talking about Joe Mixon and Samaje Perine. Yeah,
Samaje and Joe Mixon. Obviously, DJ Wolf played some running back there a little bit before AD got there, and then so there's been great quarterbacks at OU for a long time. But yeah, to have Alan Patrick was kind of who stepped in for AD, right, when AD got hurt versus Iowa State that year. So Iowa State, is when he broke his collarbone. Alan Patrick, who started off as a DB, came in and really relieved because DJ Wolf ended up flipping. When AD got there, AD just messed everything up, right? He just had people going all sorts of different directions. And so DJ went to DB, and Alan Patrick came in, after that Iowa State game and just straight dominated, had a big game for us in the game before the Big 12 championship versus Oklahoma State. Had some real big runs in that one, had some big plays versus A&M that year as well. But yeah, makes my job easy. I had the best seat in the house there for a while, right? Just handed to AD left, handed to AD right. But, then he got hurt, and then it was the Alan Patrick show. Chris Brown as well. So Chris Brown was really a workhorse for us as well. Had some big plays for us in the Big 12 championship, as well as our other running backs, and so stable of backs, right? We could just turn around and hand it to anybody, and so.
So here you go, just doing that nonstop. Yeah, it was comfortable.
I think A&M. That was I think we ended up winning that 13-12, that A&M game. But I think I maybe threw the ball. It might have been. I think it was my lowest passing attempts. It might have been 6 or 7. I mean, it was low. We just ran the ball the entire game. So. AP, Alan Patrick got the ball got a lot of carries. Then AD, as you remember, he came back for the Boise State game, for the Fiesta Bowl was his first game back.
Yes, yeah, you were just you just had to hand the ball off. That's all you had to do, which was awesome. You didn't have to really think too much, and especially in that game. So